Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello and welcome to The People's View. I'm Carl Seidel, serve as your host, and today we have Sandra Ziehm, who's Commissioner of the Hillsborough County and also a member of the Nashua Board of Education. So we have a lot to talk about, Sandra. Happy you're here, and I'm interested in seeing what's happening at the Hillsborough County now that you're still chair of the commissioners.
No, I'm not chair, actually. Actually, Mrs. Pappas is the chair this year.
Okay.
But it's been an eventful year. We were just saying before the meeting, it's really, you really need to have some experience in the job before you get to where you do justice, in my view, to the job. And so this is my second term, my third year, and I'm starting to get the hang of it, I hope. And it promises to be a tough year because, as you know, there's no money. The money is just not there. And when you start choosing where to cut, it's who do you hurt?
Yeah.
Do you hurt the nursing home, or do you hurt the jail, or do you, and those things, they weigh heavy, I think, because there are some that are vulnerable. Like I've always felt the elderly in the nursing home are very vulnerable, and so I guess the elderly in the nursing home and the jail have been my priorities, because I have this thing that you need to look at the whole budget, and you need to say, what are the things that we cannot cut? Who are the people that are vulnerable that we cannot hurt? And sometimes, you know, there are no good choices. As in the last 2 years, I didn't think I had any good choices. I didn't enjoy any of that. But I do think that if you take leadership, it's incumbent on leadership to make hard choices, and I believe it's incumbent to do it looking at the whole. You cannot allow yourself to, you know, say, oh, well, I'm a UNH cooperative member and I think their services are wonderful. I think you have to stand back from the whole thing and say, again, what are the services that I cannot cut? And so, but there are others who disagree with me, as you well know, and I'm sure the public knows, so it's, you know, one of those things.
Yeah, I can say that the 2 years that I was on the Executive Council, it was a pleasure having to work with you, because you did keep everybody organized and focused on what was real for the budget and everything like that. This year, again, you're going to run into that question of how much the reserves are used versus how much do you cut out. And you have the contracts that, I don't know, we left when the contracts weren't even settled then, and I don't know what's happening now.
Well, the interesting thing about the reserves is, as you know, in the past we've had large reserves. Right. I think at one time they might have had
$15 million? Yes.
Oh, no, I think even more than
50?
Yeah, I thought, it was a lot. It was 12 when you came on the board. It was 12, but I'm understanding that these reserves go back quite a ways.
Yeah.
And so they're just gradually being eaten up. I think now there's like 8.5 million.
Should be around that.
And if we're supplementing, we've been supplementing $3 or $4 million a year as an average. Right. And so if we supplement $4 million this year, that means we have 1 year left before we are dry. And obviously, the good thing that's been about having a reserve is when you have reserves, you don't have to borrow money. You can, like if you're doing a capital improvement, like I understand when we did capital improvements to the Goffstown building, we used the capital reserves to make it usable, to the sheetrock and the finished product, if you will. And another interesting thing about that for the public is that the work, the labor part of it, which is usually the most expensive, the Valley Street Jail folks, the inmates, if you will, came over and did the labor free of charge. Right. And so we really got a bargain because we didn't have to pay any interest on the money, plus we had free labor. So, and now there's a courthouse there. So now we are getting income from that. And anytime you can supplement the budget that way, the taxpayers like it because it doesn't come out of your pocket, right?
Right.
So,
And you have other facilities there that I know you're looking at to see whether you could get some useful income from also. And I don't know when there's talk about this woman's prison being, I guess you signed a contract for another couple of years, but after that, you're going to have to replace that.
they're estimating 2 to 3 years,
2 to 3
and they
years.
will be out of there. And if that's the case, then of course that's going to be a hole in our budget
Yeah.
because, again, that's supplemental income that we won't realize. And if anybody who's been to Goffstown and seen that building, it is not a building that will be easily leased to somebody else. In fact, it's so unique unto itself for its purpose, if you will, that it's an old building, and it will be interesting what we decide to do with that building. To be honest with you, the one gift that I think I brought, and gift is probably not the word, but skill, of course, real estate is my field of income
Yeah.
when I'm not doing politics. And
Free politics.
so the interesting thing is that in Hillsborough County, as the commissioner, I feel it's valuable to me, and I think to some extent it's valuable to the county. I went in with Sean Jasper just recently. I don't know if you remember, but I wanted to change the way we market our
Right.
properties. Currently, they do it under RFPs, which is it's a bidding process. But what they do is they put a paper at the Registry of Deeds on the board
Yeah.
and on the website, and then they do at our different county facilities have it. But really, and it's like a 10-day process. They have 10 days to respond. And after that, if they didn't respond, then if we don't keep reinserting, basically nothing is done to market those properties. And so the state went to what I consider a better model, wherein they send out the RFP to the real estate companies.
Right.
And they say, now tell me how you would market this. How much will you charge us? And how long, what do you think it's worth? And all of those kind of questions. And then those companies reply, and they pick from those companies the one that they think would best market the property. I think it's a much better process. That one building in Goffstown, I'm understanding it's been empty, totally empty, the whole building, for at least 10 years. It grieves me because I own real estate too, investment properties, and I have to tell you, I wouldn't leave my buildings empty for a month. Never mind, I would be bankrupt. I just couldn't afford to do it. So Sean Jasper took the bill to Concord, and then he had the hearings, which you're more familiar with than I am even, and I went up and interviewed, lobbied, if you will, for the build. And I enjoyed, I was concerned about the process because I haven't done it that often, but the legislators were very warm and very receptive, and they were surprised when I told them it's been empty for 10 years. So I think we have a shot at getting it past the House, and now it's gone over to the Senate, and I think we have a shot. And what that means is that there will be somebody working to put somebody in that building on a 24/7 basis.
And that's the process that the Department of Transportation has used for many years.
Yes,
and,
very effective.
I know we had to approve that, and sometimes some of those pieces of land were very hard to market, and sometimes they got a year, but usually it's within a year they have somebody.
It's interesting, again, for the conversation purposes, the county has, 500 acres, and they're beautiful prime acres. It's not granite. It's not it's good, flat, actually beautiful rolling hills. There's a little pond in back that you can go fishing on. It's beautiful. It's prime land, very valuable land
On the
I might
main
add.
road.
On the main road. And for the public's information, we also own free and clear the Registry of Deeds here in Nashua. So the county, I think if people realize how well managed the property, I think that our county has prospered over all other counties in the state, and I think it's because there have been frugal, conservative steps taken to try to protect and keep us to where we haven't had big tax increases in our county for at least 10 years. And so it's in the best interest.
It might be coming, too.
I'm afraid, if I have to make a prediction, next year it will come. because
Well, we said that the last budget that next year, the next time, we'll probably have to have some kind of property increase.
I just don't see how we can squeak by. To be honest with you, we've lost so much in the last 2 years, and you cannot continue without
you have to make up that money that was coming in from the federal government that isn't coming in.
the stimulus money.
That's right.
That was $4 million a year, I think.
Well, it was $2 million the last year,
Oh.
but it was $3.5 million that got out of the reserve fund, so that's $5.5 million.
It's a lot of money.
You can't make that up.
And the thing about it is, when people tell you, like this year, we got the delegation voted, and they voted that they would request us to the same as what Maggie Hassan requested for the state, and that was a 3% decrease.
Yeah.
So really, when you're saying a 3% decrease in your budget, you're really asking for more than 3%, because there are some costs that you do not control that go up whether you want them to or not. Social Security, the FICA for, all kinds of fees that we are charged that we don't control.
Yeah,
and so when you're asking us to go down 3, you're really asking us to go down probably 5 or 6.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's one of the, I don't know how they're going to work on the 3%. Maybe they take a certain base of what was covered by taxes and say 3% of that.
Well, the other interesting thing is that when they say 3%, they're saying 3% on our total budget.
Right.
And it's like, what, $87 million or something like that. But $30 million of that
comes from this.
comes from the federal government.
Right.
That's not money we control.
Right.
So really, our budget is 87 minus 30.
Yeah.
But when they talk about a cut, they're talking about on the whole 87. I hope they're going to be reasonable. I really do, because I think that unless are we willing to jeopardize the Valley Street Jail? Last year, this touched me. We had 14 people waiting to be tried for murder in the Valley Street Jail at one time, all at the same time. And I tell myself, if we don't have sufficient guards, if we're not making sure that nothing violent happens, then who's going to pay for that? If one of those people broke out, and several of the counties in New Hampshire had breakouts,
Right.
if one of those had broken out, who's to say that they wouldn't murder some innocent person? So that weighs on me. When I make my decision, I tell myself, you have to think safety first, and then, again, I go back to these people in the wheelchair who can't come
That's
and
a
lobby.
nursing home, too, which is the second largest facility.
And they can't come and lobby. They cannot. They can't get in their wheelchairs and come over and say, please don't cut my program. They can't do that. So I think that we need to look at those. But this year, you might find this interesting. We had a tremendous, we had a full day where each department head came and gave an overview of their department.
Really?
It was wonderful. We have a new attorney, she's not attorney, county attorney, excuse me, I was trying to think of the right title.
Yeah.
And she came in, and she actually had pictures of where she spent most of her time, the felons, the people. And she showed the pictures, and then she told us how they were, what they were being tried for, and what the result was. And there wasn't a light featherweight case in the bunch, let me tell you. They were, and because of that, the murderers, the sexual assaults, the really heinous crimes, they have to take priority. Sure. So if you had a lesser crime, you would wait 2.5 years to get your day in court. And I don't know how the public feels about that, but I'm not sure.
That's not fair.
I don't think, not only that, but what are we doing, waiting for them to get worse?
Yeah, yeah.
Are we waiting until they become heinous?
Yeah.
And that's how it happens. It creeps up. See, to me, we have to balance everything and make priorities. And when we don't, I think that,
Well, I know there's not too many places you can really cut. I was wondering, one of the things we approved in last year's budget was that extension of the gas line to the nursing home. Did that go
well,
through?
and that was a good thing.
Right.
It's all installed, and my understanding is we're saving money.
Good.
It's just actually come in the last month or two, 6 weeks. But it's going to be a money saver. And to me, that was a no-brainer. When you invest money to save money, you always, in my business, if I can invest $10,000 and in the long run I get back more than 10, no-brainer, even if I have to borrow the money. So, and in our case, we haven't been borrowing money because one of the interesting things when I got first involved in politics to me was when you borrow money, commercial money like that, you end up paying double. Like if you borrow 10, then it costs you 20.
If you bond it out, you mean?
If
Yeah,
you bond
sure.
it out, yes, thank you, Carl. I should have said that. And so, to me, if you can avoid that, you've saved a bucket of money. So,
And almost every other county has borrowed money.
they all are, as far as I know. All the other
only
counties
one
are borrowing money. So,
we're the ones
and
that
I,
do.
you know, I know I'm on TV, but I have to give a plug. I do think that Rona Charbonneau was, when she was county commissioner, I think she was very diligent about trying to protect the people's interests. And so she's no longer in politics, but I have she's the one who got me to run for county. I tell you
know
that.
that.
Oh, yeah, she said, oh, Sandra, you got to do this.
She was your mentor. Huh?
Well,
Is that-
and the thing is, I think that she, even though she is no longer there, she was there so long, her heart was there, and she was into it to the point where she didn't want to see it go south. She didn't want it to. She wants it to be strong. She cares about the taxpayer, which I find.
Well, a lot of
heartwarming.
people there do,
Yes.
but a lot of people, I think, like their pictures in the paper or their words on the newspaper or something.
A lot of
like
people,
that.
for a lot of people, it's about getting glory.
Well,
That's the one thing I don't respect. If you disagree with me, I don't have any problem at
Well,
all. In
that's
fact, it's good.
yeah, that's one
It's
reason
healthy.
we have this show is to get people to know some of the people up there and what kind of person they are, and how well they know what they're supposed to be doing up there. And I think it brings a little bit more familiarity to our people out there that are listening in.
Oh,
on this.
absolutely. I wish, truthfully, I've always wished that they televised state. Even the committee meetings. I believe it's the committee meetings where
you see a little
where
bit
you
more.
see, well, and that's where you make the changes.
Yeah.
By the time it gets to your full boards, it's already been shaped.
Yeah.
Now it's just waiting for the stamp of approval. And so the committee meetings, to me, are where the meat is decided.
Well, I understand that Dick Gagnon, who is
Yes.
running this operation here, is taping now some of the committee hearings too, and it's available. They're trying to, I think, do all the finance and the Ways and Means, which are really the ones that get down to the nitty-gritty on the budget.
I actually saw executive council meetings that he had taped. And actually, it was informative. It was wonderful for me to see how the people I voted for vote. Because how do you, a
Yeah.
knowledgeable voter is always a better voter. And so I tell people, if you don't agree with what I do and say, let me know. And if I'm not big enough to listen to the people who elect me, then I don't belong in office.
Well, we
So-
want people to give us feedback too for these shows, because are we having the right guests? Are we asking the right questions? Well, who would you like to see? You know, we'd like to find that, and they can do that. They can contact our, the Nashua Republican City Committee sponsors, and their website is nashuagop.org, and they can contact us.
I don't
through
get to
them.
go, I regret to have to say that I don't get to go to too many of those things anymore because, the school board is on nights and then the county's during the day, and it keeps me running the roads.
I guess so.
But I feel bad that I'm not, I actually enjoyed
Well, you're in your 8th year
social-
in the Board of Education now.
coming up for re-election.
How about that? Okay.
Yes,
and
it's,
then this is your 3rd year as a commissioner. So I don't know how you do it either and run a business.
Well, that was one of the things that we talked about. We actually talked about the commissioners on the county are 2-year terms, and you will remember we put in a bill
Right.
to try to stagger it so that you didn't lose all 3 at one time. Continuity is a
I agree with you.
big thing in my view. It's because the first 2 years I was on county, I'm not sure. I mean, I like to think I made contributions, but certainly not what you would have made if you knew the details.
Yeah.
It's everything's in the details.
Well, I hate to see that too, and that's why we put in that bill. But there are a lot of people that say people who get elected in New Hampshire don't get more than a 2-year term. That's it.
Well, but the way we had it set up, as I recall, was that you would have one who
Who had a 4-year term.
yeah, and that was all, and
That's
and
it.
it would change
And that would
different
rotate.
commissioner each
Right.
time, and that way, you could control this continuity issue that I think, and if you think about it, if the commissioners, in my view, we have an administrator that answers to us for the whole county.
Right.
How can we hold him, if they all three come in brand new at the same time, how are they going to hold him accountable when they don't even know what he's doing?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
To me, it makes no sense. But there were people, obviously, it didn't go anywhere. So I'm hoping the real estate one will go. And I actually...
Well, we'll see. But, you know, the Board of Aldermen do it that way. They have several of them that are 4-year terms, and the rest have 2-year terms. Yes. And I think that adds to the continuity, although a lot of our aldermen have been there for a while.
Well, it's funny because that's going to be coming up, too, in November.
Right.
We're having city elections.
Well, tell us how the budget thing's going in the Board of Education. You just approved your budget, and you sent it on to the aldermen to take care of and look at where they could snip here and there.
You know, coming down here, I said to myself, Sandra, how much do you want to say? Because, and not that I like to think I'm transparent. I want to be transparent because I think that's in the best interest again. But this was the most divisive, in my years on the board, this was the most divisive budget we've had. I cannot even tell you, most people will know that Superintendent Conrad came in with, I think it was a 1.8% budget, 1.8% increase.
I thought it was a little too. They got it down to 8% though, when he came in originally.
Actually, it wasn't quite 2 when he...
1.9 something.
It was...
And he not,
well, and then the mayor came in, and she said, I want all of the departments 1%. Yeah. So here we had, you know, not quite a 2% budget from the superintendent, and the mayor saying you need to cut it down 0.9 million, I mean, almost $1 million. It's any way you look at it. And you have the same problems there. There are some increases that we do not control. We just do not. And many of them stem, to my way of thinking, from the federal government unfunded mandates. It's like with Title I and with No Child Left Behind.
Right.
What happens is they initiate these programs to get you to do it their way, not our way. And once, and so for 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, they give you the money you need, and then gradually they start taking it away. And so what I think it's injurious. I think it hurts. I think it damages greatly our ability locally to see where the true need is and put the oil equally on the wheel so that special interest groups don't get more than their fair share. Yeah. Every child needs to read, every child needs to write, and every child needs to count. And so because you might not happen to live in the district, that Title I is the poverty program. And if you don't happen to live in the right location, doesn't matter that you're poverty, doesn't matter that your child needs more. They won't get it because they're not in the right, they don't live on the right street. To me, I think it's terrible. It makes me crazy.
I don't understand that at all. I didn't know that.
But every one of them, see, the 2 programs that cost us most, the poverty, we're very, the nation as a whole tries to give poverty an inside straight. I don't think you can do it because poverty is dispersed throughout. In every ward in Nashua, there's poverty. I don't care what anybody says. And so I think to pick, you know, well, they've got 10 more over here than they have over here, so we can put all the money over here. They end up with the smaller classes. They end up with with the paraprofessionals. They end up with a supervisor, a second principal, if you will. They end up with all kind of resources that the other children don't get. And to me,
why isn't it based all on the students' needs? Why aren't they able to segregate? I mean, you segregate according to certain skills that they may have.
Well, and our children, not in elementary, but in high school, the kids are placed, you know, foundation is beginning level, and then they have the middle level, and then they have advanced placement. So they are divided according in high school. That's harder to do, though, in elementary school, because in elementaries they tell you to keep the children close to home, keep them in their comfort level. It was interesting to me being on the board. Educators believe that the child who starts in one school and ends in that school they say statistics prove that child does better because that child was comfortable. And when you're comfortable, you don't mind taking a chance. You don't mind trying. You're not sure you know the answer, but you'll try it. You'll say what you think. Whereas if you're intimidated, you're not going to do that.
But don't most of the elementary schools have more than one grade 1 or grade 2.
Oh, yes,
So,
absolutely. Some of them have 3 and 4.
Yeah. So can't you just separate it, keep them in the same school, but separate them according to the different classrooms?
It's not the way they do it.
No,
I think, to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of things they could do, but it takes dialogue, it takes stakeholders. The whole time I've been on the board, I'm always saying, please come and let us know what you think. Make your voice heard. Maybe you don't have time to run for office now, but you do. If you have a child in school, you have to have time to let that child know how important education is. You have to. And the way you do, one of the ways you can do that is through the Board of Education. All they have to do is go on the website, and they can put their comments right on that website. I mean, and it goes to all the board members. I tell people all the time, don't just call me. Go on the website.
Oh, do you get very many people to do that?
I get quite a few, but it's because I've been around. Again, it goes to, people know who I am now.
You're one that spoke up a lot more than others.
I'm very vocal. I'm not sure that's good.
Well,
got me in a lot of trouble. I'm in big trouble.
Well, we had somebody
This
on.
year.
You were probably there when Howard Kaufman made his little speech about
I
substitute
absolutely
teachers.
was, and I think he had a lot of good. He actually spoke to me first, and I said,
see.
Howard, you need to go to the school board, and because it's important that they share.
Their stories,
a lot of those people don't have, I don't think any of them have children in the school. As I think of it, I don't think of even one of the school board members that has a child in the school. I think Mr. Hollowell is the most likely. He had somebody in the high school. They may have graduated last year or this. So he's even phasing out. And so Edwina Kwan and the other lady, Kim Shaw, they both had children in the school. And so they came in with a grasp on the school. The learning curve on the Board of Ed, like the county, is colossal.
Well, there's a lot of things that you have to do. One of the things that, Howard Kaufman, before we leave that subject, has been interviewed by us. So you'll have a show, you'll see him in our People's View. And he talked about some of the problems with controlling the kids. The discipline is not there in most of the areas.
We absolutely need to toughen up on that discipline. Yeah. That's one of the things I've been most vocal about. You can't, when you have, in our elementary schools, we have like 6 classes that have 27 kids. 27 kids. If you have one child that misbehaves, your whole day will be spent, will be spent trying to keep that child under control. At what price does that happen? The other 26 get much less. Discipline,
you have to have a discipline to have a good learning environment.
And we don't even have monitors for timeout. We do not. We have got, and that's why going to the budget, and I've said this will not be news to anybody who follows, but I have said where I disagree with the city is that, to me, you look at the whole and you say, what are our priorities? For me, the kids. I don't have any kids in the school now. But I can tell you, they are tomorrow. They are our future of our nation. And for us to have a third, one of the statistics that grieves me, at our high schools, in both of our high schools, over 1/3 of both of those schools graduate without reading on grade level. How do you teach a child anything if they can't read?
How can they graduate?
They do, though. We have 2, by the way. That's another interesting thing. We have 2 diplomas. We have 2 diplomas. And one is a lesser requirement than the other, which I have to say, I said when we did it, I think this is wrong. I think we're watering our standards.
That's right.
And I also think we're sending a bad message. We're sending the message to these kids
you can get away with it.
that when you go out to the real world, they're going to make exceptions for you.
Yeah.
I don't think so. At Harmony Real Estate, if you don't show up for work, I have to let you go. I can't afford to pay you.
That's
Just
right.
that simple.
That goes for any business, really.
It's
any
not a good
business.
message that we send. And that double diploma.
Well, when I heard that from Howard, and then I remember going over to one of the charter schools. Now, these kids want to learn, and they behave.
But see, that was what I had. That was the problem I had with forcing kids to stay in school from 16 to 18. The kids that you are forcing to stay in school are going to be disruptive. And they're going to, so what we're doing is they're not going to they're not going to do well anyway because they don't want to be there, so they're going to fight it all the way. And in their fighting, they're going to take away from those who do want to be there. I don't think it makes sense to penalize the majority for a distinct minority. And that's what we do with these unfunded mandates.
And again, you can't segregate those troublemakers.
You can't do anything. Your hands are almost tied behind your back,
And
they almost stick a gag in your mouth to boot.
Well, we're not going to stick a gag in our mouth.
Yeah, but
yours or mine, maybe.
I'll get in a lot of trouble for this. And that's why I tell you. And I said at the budget, I said, we have money to beautify the streets of downtown Nashua. While we're taking away from our children, while we have 27 in a classroom with no paraprofessional, I think that's totally unacceptable, as I have said many, many times. And it doesn't mean I'm right. And in the end, if the majority disagree with me, then I lose. But I won't lose because people didn't know. I want people to know why I do what I do. And so from there, but see, if the majority feel like I feel, if they all spoke up, they would crumble. They would get what we need.
Yeah.
We would get. And the perfect
Audience, that's what you're hearing.
the perfect example of that is with the security issue.
Yeah.
There were quite a few who didn't want that security. They didn't, and it was expensive. That was $1.2 million or something. It was big money. And we all, myself, school board member Tom Bond, school member Kim Muse, and a lot of other people went down and testified in front of the alderman. I believe when we started, it could have gone either way. But by the time it was over,
there was a
we carried the day.
Yeah.
And I would suggest to you it was not primarily the school board members who made the difference. It was those parents who came out and said, I want my children to be safe. I do not want my children. And my whole argument was, at Sandy Hook, there were kids who lived because they were able to put them under lock and key. I always remember this, it broke my heart. This one teacher took her kids and locked them in the bathroom. And then she sat down and acted like she was grading papers. And when he came in, she said, I'm grading papers. There's nobody here but me. And she died. But she died heroically, in my view. And if I have to die, God grant me the ability to do it saving children, because I don't have that many. I'm old. So, not you, Carl, but I'm old. So, and if it would be worth it if I could think, that was a whole class, so there was at least 16, 17 kids in there that did not die. What if she didn't have a lock to lock them under? And so and there were stories about kids who didn't die because they were locked. Yeah. So I have to say...
no, that's one of the good things that is in the budget. How are we going to handle this problem that they've had, though, of graduating kids that aren't ready to graduate and go on to the Nashua Community College? How many of those kids from Nashua high schools are in remedial classes because they're not up to level for the community college?
Carl,
that's a shame.
I was very vocal when they did that. I said, I think you're a lawsuit waiting to happen.
That's right.
In the first place, if you told me, if my child was in the harder group and he didn't get to graduate because he didn't quite make it, and these kids over here got their certificate with lesser requirements, I'm going to get a lawyer. And I know that sounds terrible, but I believe that ultimately that will end up in a lawsuit. And as a nation, I guess that's how we settle these challenges.
Well, I imagine that's one thing. Although when I went way back when I went to school, they had high school had two diplomas too. One was a Regents diploma, they called it New York State, where you had to take a statewide test to pass to get that diploma.
It's like a GED, similar.
No, it's not similar to GED. It was subject-oriented, but it was a lot more difficult than the regular. The students didn't have to get that. The Regents diplomas more or less guaranteed you an entrance to college in the state.
We're going to have, they're talking about having a third, one with honorary status, if you will. And so that would go to a third, and that's been one of the topics. Those kind of topics are discussed in curriculum and curriculum committee meeting. And the public is free to come down and testify in those, say how they feel about it. What do they like and what do they dislike? And people with children in the school, when they come, we don't have children in the school, so 90% they're telling us stuff we don't know. Like Howard, he definitely brought up things that were not common knowledge on that board. Truthfully, about a year ago or 18 months, we had an issue where parents came and were upset because their children's class was showing them movies, Walt Disney movies, which had no content whatsoever, which probably what Howard said to you, right?
Yeah.
No content involved, and we passed a policy which states if they show a movie, it has to relate to the subject being taught by that class. And if it does not, they are violating our policy. But guess what? If they don't come forward like Howard and say your policy is being violated, then school board, we don't have any kids. So, and Howard told me after he was on this show, after he showed up and discussed it with the school board, he went and substituted again, and they did the same thing. And it was totally unrelated to the topic being taught. So for the most part, I would agree with Howard that when they do it, it is babysitting.
Well, I hope they don't backfire on poor Howard on getting another substitute teaching job. But one thing that he was talking about was that they don't have any kind of real training for these substitute teachers. And
takes money.
Well, how does it take money to add another person to a training class that's already going on for the teachers?
First off, we don't have enough for the teachers even. We have very little.
Yeah, but if you can add a few more people, I mean...
We don't, basically we don't even... I guess I'm not saying...
You don't have anything for the teachers?
We don't have a lot because it costs money.
Yeah.
You have to bring in a speaker and,
You don't have senior teachers that can do some of the training?
That I know of, they don't do. They do have a head teacher who gets a stipend.
Yeah.
But their contract, I think we only have currently 2 days that we can do professional development. That means that if they come in, and we have to pay them, I mean, that's part of, so we're paying for every time you put on a professional development, however many people are in there, you're paying for their day for that day.
Yeah.
Same rate that they would get if they were in class. And then you're also paying for this speaker. And I know, I want to say $1,200 is, I mean, people are not going to come from outside of this state for less than $1,200.
No, but they don't charge if you have 10 or 12 people. I mean, any difference?
No, once you're having it, you have as many as the room will hold. And we do when we have them. But we don't, there's not much, if you look at our budget, there's no money in there for professional development that I know about. I mean, we don't even have money. This budget grieved me because Mr. Conrad, Mr. Conrad's a good man. I have great respect for him. I think he cares about the kids and he does what he thinks is best for them. Having said that, I don't always agree with him. I think it's healthy to disagree because then I see your side, you see my side, we're both smarter. And so, but having said that, it's mind-boggling because we don't have the money to, he wanted this year, what I was going to say was, in the budget, he wanted to create a new program. It was a literature program. And the thinking is that, again, going back to the reading, if you can't read, you can't learn. Yeah. So they're going to try to promote more reading and make it fun reading so that the kids will want to do it. And as they want to do it, they'll do it more. And the more they do it, the better they're going to get at it. So he wanted $164,500, I think, for, and I want to say it was 4th and 5th grade books, leisure books. And while I think it's a lofty goal, we have so many other needs that I guess I had a lot of problems with it. One problem I had is that we have a library, and the library safeguards those books. So we use those books year after year, year in, year out, and they're even maintained, if they try to mend them, if you will, when they get torn or misused. And so who's going to do that when we leave them in the classroom? If you have a different teacher every year, is that teacher going to know? And so that was one of my concerns. And another concern was, is it more important to have another teacher and make smaller classes than it is to give them these leisure books. What I said was, if we need leisure books, let's have a fundraiser. I go yard sailing. I'm used to making do with little or nothing, so that's who I am. But I said, go out in the summer, you can pick up wonderful books for practically nothing at the yard sale. So let's do that until we get the classrooms where they are no more 23, I think, no more than 23 in my view. But 27, it's totally, when there's no paraprofessional. And I tell people the sad thing about that, it would, if all of those kids were right on the same level, it might not be a problem. I'm talking about elementary now, but what happens is you have one child who is 2 years behind. You have another child who's 2 years ahead. You have another child who has dyslexia. So you have two. In every class, we average 2 kids special education. Whether it's dyslexia or some other form of learning disability, they require extra special attention. We have English language learners. I think it's like 1,000 in the school. So that means that most of them are going to have an English language learner. And what that means is they have a child there who doesn't understand English. Some of them fresh off the boat, no offense intended by that, but they've just come here. They don't always come in preschool. Some of them come, they're in junior high school, they're in high school, they're in 7th grade, 6th grade, whatever it happens to be. And the first class that they take is English, and they try to work on their English in that class. But after that, they're thrown out. They're mainstreamed. That means that they're sitting there in math class, they don't understand English, but they're getting the English, they don't speak English, but they're getting their math lesson in English. And so how much is a child like that going to learn?
That's why I don't understand why they can't customize. You say the federal regulations have a lot to do with that?
Well,
I mean,
whenever you get federal money, it comes with
yeah, I know, lots of restrictions.
With lots and lots of restrictions. Some of them are good and some of them are not so good. Some of them are, when they look at making requirements, they look at the average for the United States. So is Nashua the same as Berlin, New Hampshire? I don't think so. We have 13,000 kids. How many do you think they have in Berlin, New Hampshire? So does that create a different...
Manchester isn't the same as Nashua even.
I think they said Manchester has over 100 foreign languages in their school. When you have that kind of diversity, it creates problems that you wouldn't have otherwise. And yet you have this one teacher, and she's supposed to, this is what really makes me crazy, she's supposed to follow the child. She's supposed to meet the needs of every one of those 27 kids right on their level. I'm telling you, she's Superman. And even Superman. And it sounds like I'm very passionate about education. You can tell I get too...
Well, Sandra, we can go on and on and on here.
It could go on and on.
There's lots of things that we're not going to solve, but hopefully you've brought the attention of some of these things to the public.
I hope
so.
And
maybe they'll get back. Maybe you'll get more emails and more.
I'm glad to hear from them, though.
Okay.
Truly, I am. I'm always glad to hear because I don't know everything. I mean, I'm just trying. I do try to do the best I can. And I do place the kids as my priority. I'll tell you right now.
And I think that should be.
And if that means I have to fight everybody in the world,
well, maybe we'll have an ideal situation one of these times,
it would be
Sandra,
nice.
And we'll get everybody trained, and all these kids will graduate with honors or something. But not unless they really deserve it.
Not unless they work for it.
That's right.
Not
they have to work
because
for it.
they need to learn that
And
life is not easy.
That's right. And maybe some of this nanny state stuff is one of the things that is setting the wrong pattern for everybody. If this great state's going to take care of you.
Well, I'm hoping I had a conversation at the board, public meeting one night, wherein they said, Sandra, you continue to bring up that same thing over and over and over. Why don't you give it up? And I said, I don't give it up because I'm hoping that one of these days I will convince you that I'm right. And of course they all tee-hee-ha that. But I'm also hoping that in November, I'm hoping that the public will look closely at who's running and why they're running and what it is they care enough to fight for. Because you have to fight for what you believe in. It's the only way you change is to have people who care enough to fight for it. So I'm hoping that in November there will be good. I know there are going to be some good candidates. I'm hearing we're going to have quite a few. And so competition is a healthy thing.
That's right. All and everything.
And
And
the
makes
strongest
you better.
survive.
That's
Yes,
right,
the
that's right.
strongest survive. So.
Well, thank everybody for listening in. Remember that this is sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee, NashuaGOP.org, and come to our meetings on the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And we have some wonderful speakers, and maybe we'll get Sandra to speak there sometime when she doesn't have a meeting of one of these committees. So thank you very much
No,
again.
no, it was wonderful.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. I miss
My
you at
pleasure, too.
County.
Oh,
I do.
thank you.
I miss you at County.
Thank you.